Good morning, brother. Good to see you, buddy.
How are you? What's going on?
Oh man, good. Hey, and thanks for being in our at our sister station in Phoenix. They love you, man. So you're the greatest, buddy.
Well,
Um,
I appreciate it.
dude, you've been all over this thing. So we all know that in this kind of situation, it's never one thing. You got a beat up offensive line. You had no lane. They've been beaten up from last
Yeah.
year. You got first time play caller. Obviously, you got Jalen. The whole
Yeah.
thing. There's a lot of blame to go around. Starts up front because that's how good they were. What's your diagnosis?
I think the diagnosis is just that, that they're not as good as they were a year ago. And as you mentioned it really starts up front is, that's how they've been built when they've, had their success over the last few years has been built up front, running the football first, and then all the things coming off of that. And this year, they're just, like you said, banged up front, but they're just not playing as well up front. They're not running the football very well. And you come into the season and you have that plan, right? Is that we're going to be the same team we were last year. We've got pretty much the same pieces. This is going to be our MO. We're going to run the football and then we'll pass it as a complementary piece. And then when you go into the season and you're not able to run the football, one of the hardest things is to just, okay, we're not doing that very well. Let's just change up everything that we're doing and everything that we thought coming into the season, and let's just revamp this entire offense. That is a very difficult thing to do, mid-season. And so I think right now they're just trying to figure out, okay, how can we be successful with this football team? What do we hang our hat on? Because offensively, they're just not very good across the board. And again, I even tweeted a couple of weeks ago. I think they're at the point now where you need to focus more on the pass game than the run game because the run game is just not working. And you've got pieces on the outside. You've been successful throwing the football in the past, but you've got to commit to something. And that's what I think this team has missed is that we've seen some games where they're throwing it all over the yard, and then other games where they're beating their head against the wall trying to run the football. And I don't really know, what they want to be or what they think they can be. And you need to find an identity, whatever that may be. You need to find an identity for this football team. I think if you're going to have a chance to really make another run at it.
I think you're spot on. Like Baldy and I will look at the tape every week. We'll analyze it. You
Yeah.
see it, and it's right in front of you. Last year it was easy to see, right? Like they struggled throwing the
Yeah.
football, and it was like, hey, you're a downhill run team. Like lean into it. And to your
Yeah.
point, you can't lean into the run game this year, so you got to be able to throw it. So then you start to look at some play design. You see receivers in the same vicinity. You see a lot of it's not creative, right? There's a lot of issues within the pass game. How do you jolt that pass game when you look at some of the play design and you look at some of the lack of motion and some of the
Yeah.
lack of creativity?
Well, I mean, again, there's so many ways to look at everything. Is that this pass game this year is very similar to the pass game that they've had for a number of years, and it's been very successful for them when they've needed to throw the football. But the idea has always been, okay, last year when we're throwing the football, it's because they're putting 8 in the box and they're leaving one on the outside. And it's just a perfect storm. We don't have to get complicated. We don't have to get creative because I got AJ Brown out there.
I
And
got man,
so
I
if
got
you want to
natural
stack,
man beaters.
yeah, I mean, if you want to stack, the box, great. And now I can just drop back. And it also plays to Jalen's strengths as well. I don't think Jalen is great at, reading the complexity of things and working quickly through his read. That's not his greatest strength, but he's a very good thrower of the football. So when he knows where he wants to throw the football, he can come back and throw it as well as anybody. And so it fits what Jalen is also. Oh, you're going to give me the one-on-one. You're going to give me the simple, read on the outside. Boom, I can do that, and I can do that at an extremely high level. And so it's all fit in the past. And so, now this year, again, you're not running the football as well, and if you're not running it, maybe teams aren't stacking the box as much. And so they're forcing you to have to do some different things. Like, I'm not a guy that thinks every concept needs to be complicated. The most simple concepts in football, the ones I ran when I was in high school, were still my favorite routes to run when we were in the pros. And they're good quality concepts and they work. And so what the Eagles do, to me, it's not a bunch of bad concepts. They're good concepts. They are simple. And, there would be times in that offense I would probably get bored because, it's like, can we do some
Kurt,
different
I
things?
run that with my 8th grade
Me?
team. I run those mirrored concepts.
But again, there's nothing wrong with it if you're getting the right look. The mirrored concepts, it's good, solid, simple football based on good, solid concepts. But again, when you're not having great success running the football, and teams are doing some different things, and let's be honest, when you have guys like AJ Brown, because you look at a lot of teams across the league. And they're going to take their best player and they're going to move him all over the place and make him the central figure in just about every pass concept. The Eagles don't necessarily do that. And I think not just about AJ Brown, Devontae Smith does some things that are unique to him. They have a really good tight end. And so it's not just about one guy. Yeah, but and that becomes, again, the part of it is that if you've built your whole offense for years, and even coming into training camp, this is how we're going to pass the football. This is what are going to be our pass concepts. Again, it's very hard to just in the middle of the season when it wasn't working, with your plan coming in to go, okay, we're going to scrap all that and we're just going to come up with this creative motion formation-based.
Yeah, I'm not expecting them to be McVay or Shanahan. Like, I get that.
You're not gonna get there. And so, again, it's figuring out with the pieces you have, what is the best way to play football? What has to be our identity this year? And if it is the pass game, then you do have to ask those questions. Okay, can this pass game be enough? If we get more creative, how does that help us? Does it hurt our quarterback, in terms of what he does well? And so all of those questions have to be answered. And I know it seems like such an easy fix on the outside. Like, hey, this isn't working. Do something different. You're like, change, go become this. It's not that easy. Like I said, in the middle of the season when you're preparing for a team and all the things that go into, the 4 or 5 days of practice that you have, is figuring out how that works. And this year, I just think they came in with a plan and they thought it was going to be what it's been in the past and what it was last year. And it's not. And now you're seeing a team that's struggling because that plan is not working as it has in the past. And they're trying to figure out, how to win games in spite of that.
No, and I'm with you. You're not going to just change your offense in the middle of the season. I mean, it's silly, right? Like, I guess we're talking about adding some wrinkles, looking at where you were.
Let me add another piece to that. Like, you can go back and look at Peyton Manning in the way that they played football, or Tom Brady in the way they didn't have all these crazy bells and whistles. Mm-hmm. They liked to be very stagnant with their formations. They liked to see what the defense was doing, because when you move, defense moves. Okay, so you've
but sometimes you get an answer, right? Like, isn't that right?
No, sometimes you do that, and it becomes an easy win for you because you motion and they're out of position. Yes, but at the same time, okay, you move, they move. Now you've got to see the moving parts, and you've got to understand all the moving parts. And that's why I think certain guys go, let's just keep it stagnant. I know what's going on. I know what my concepts are. I'm very comfortable with that. And I'm comfortable with what the defense can do out of that. And so where it may look a little bit more simple, it can be more effective for certain guys. I remember hearing a report a couple of years ago that Aaron Rodgers didn't like a lot of motion.
Right.
He liked to keep guys stagnant because I can see it. I can make adjustments. And so, again, there's just so many ways to do it. We're so much built into, if it doesn't work, change it, as opposed to, okay, let's just figure out what's not working about. Why is this not working? It doesn't have to necessarily be bad. It just may need some adjustments, or we need to advance in what we're doing as opposed to just being someone else because someone else is having success. It just doesn't fit for everybody the same way.
You're so right. You look at when the pass game was at its height in 22, it was an RPO based offense, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
when Jalen's involved in a run game, it just opened things up. And when he's running RPO, play action, he's moving a little bit. He's got a defense on its heels. The throwing lanes are there. There's so the windows are open for him. And then, you can. I'm curious. Do you see I see an offense that obviously lacks rhythm and confidence, right? So maybe going back a little more RPO, a little more tempo would help this past game.
I mean, possible. And again, but all of that RPO and everything came off the run game. And so it comes off being successful in the run game. And then, guys are inching towards the box. And we got to get there before Saquon gets going. And now we've got openings on the outside. When you're not getting that same involvement from defensive players because they're not as concerned about it, it makes it harder on the outside, and
that's why I led
you've
with
watched.
having Jalen a part of the run game more because he hasn't been a
Yeah,
part
I
of the
mean,
run game more.
right, but I think it's one of those things that, again, Jalen is a really good player and a dynamic player with the ball in his hands and in space. But if you've watched them the last couple of years with the RPO, there's as many of those RPOs where he ends up having to keep it, that the throw's not there, and he kind of
Yeah.
runs towards the sideline and basically goes down, and it's a loss. And so they're not having the same type of success with their RPO game that
Yeah.
they did earlier as well. And so, again, I think it's so easy to just kind of throw things up against the wall and say, well, this used to work, do that. Well,
I know.
it used to work.
We're at a loss, right? Like where the answers come
Because
from is
I
is
think the
what's
bottom line
frustrating.
is they're just not as good a team right now,
Yeah.
And again, it
Yeah.
starts with upfront and what you thought your identity was going to be, and your identity is not that. And then again, you look at Jalen, and there's a lot of scrutiny with Jalen. Jalen is a really, really good quarterback. He's really good at what he does, just like every other quarterback is really good at what they do. And so that doesn't mean that they're great at everything, right? That doesn't mean you take a great dropback passer and you make him an RPO guy, just because, hey, this might work. For Jalen, I don't know if he's a guy that, hey, we drop back with him 35 or 40 times a game and we come up with this complicated pass system. And we think that's going to be the best way to be successful. So you have to still fit into what your players are really good at on top of that. And so though that becomes the questions. Okay, if what we thought we were going to be really good at is we're not good at that, how do we build this offense with our players and with their strengths? What do we do that can just change this up and allow us to be just as successful, but doing it a completely different way? I don't think that's as common, as we want to make it sound. Like, hey, just figure out,
I know.
what this team can do to be successful, and you can do that. Like, I mean, I was never going to become a running quarterback. Like, you can't just say, well, we need Kurt to run more. Well, that's not going to help us. Like, that's not going to be the best thing. And so, I think the bottom line is they're just not playing as well this year. It doesn't mean that, their new offensive coordinator can't call plays. It doesn't mean, whatever. It doesn't mean a lot of different things other than this was what we thought we could be good at. This is, how we felt we were built. And we're not. We're not as good at that this year as we have been in the past. And now we're going to have to try to muddle through it more than redesign it down the stretch. And it may be something that comes to the offseason and we go, okay, we got to retool this thing. We got to make it look different. And we go into the offseason going, okay, no longer can we be a dominating run team with a pass game as a complement. We need to figure out how to be more balanced. We need to figure out how to be more in the pass mode. And we got to get Jalen and our pieces, we got to design it around them from that perspective, which I don't think they came into the season doing because they felt like they were going to pick up where they left off last year.
No, I look, everything you say is right. You just look at it and you go, you're 8-4, you're still in first place, right? You're still in the hunt for a
Yep.
1 seed. And so it's
Exactly.
hard to reconcile, hey, it's just completely broken and I can't
Right.
fix it, right? Like, I mean, you're going to try everything. Can I, use a little tempo and, you know,
Well,
get that
but I
going?
think you're also saying you're 8-4. And if we can just get healthy and a little bit better in the run game,
Yeah.
to go along with what we like, it's not so far off. It doesn't look like last year, right? I mean, they were so dominant last year.
Sure.
Um, and it doesn't look like that. And so it looks like, more of a struggle right now. But like you said, they're 8-4. And so, do you throw everything out because you're 8-4 and, you've lost some close games and some tight games? Like, it's just not that far away. But you've got to figure out, okay, we've got to get better running the football. We just have to get better running the football. And then we can be more efficient in the pass game on top of that. And then we can get back to winning. I just think right now they're not very good in the run game. And that to me is what's causing this whole thing and all of these
Yeah.
questions and everybody wanting to change everything
Yeah.
that they
Yeah.
do is because they're not running the football and
Yeah.
they're not, getting any big plays, which is another thing that, I don't think we talk about enough. But when you don't get big plays and you're asked to drive the football the length of the field, 10 and 12 plays every drive, that's hard football. No matter
Yeah.
how good you are, no
Yeah.
matter what you're great at, that is a hard way to play football. And last year they got so many big plays in the run game that it just alleviates so much pressure because one negative play, one holding call, one missed throw by a quarterback, one negative run, and it's tough to overcome those things consistently when you're not getting the easy big plays. And I think that's another thing that you're seeing with this team is they're not getting those big plays
No.
like they
No.
did a year ago. And so football is just infinitely harder when you don't get big plays.